Thanks, David. This guy's doing a great job for the association, as are Rob and Trish. It occurs to me that when I introduced people at the beginning, I forgot to mention Sally Ann Morris, our secretary. Forgive me, please. She does a great job. And I should have mentioned our parliamentarian, Mike Lyman, and our proctor, Sue Dutmers. Now, I'm going to try to fire through this quickly to summarize some of the activities of our association, or of our committees, rather. As I indicated in my letter, in our last newsletter, the board decided to establish or work on establishing a strategic plan. We've come a long way in that regard. Tim Irvin is here. He's our consultant, and along with Claire Carner, that have assisted us in the process. And I can just read here what we have determined so far and established so far. We've created a revised and new mission statement, which is to preserve and protect the water quality, natural resources, and quality of life in the Glen Lake watershed through leadership, education, and collaboration. You may see, if you remember the last one, we've added quality of life as one of the things that we're going to be sticking our nose into, as long as 75% of the board members agree that we should do so. And then, next one, and we also created a vision statement which reads to be the recognized leader in evidence-based strategies for protecting Glen Lake watershed while advancing environmental education, sustainable policies, and quality of life. There are 4 primary areas of focus that we have discussed in connection with this strategic plan. And as you see, they are as follows: the watershed protection, which is obvious, education and communication, quality of life again, and organizational development. And what can we all do in connection with this strategic plan? We can obviously join in protecting our natural resources and advocating for same. We can learn about the association. We can become a Glen Lake guardian that Trish mentioned. We can volunteer. The lifeblood of our organization is volunteers. Without volunteers, we wouldn't be what we are today. We can share with us, you can share with us your thoughts and questions, donate and help us attain our annual plans and long-term goals, and you can build your legacy around making a difference to protect and preserve this one-of-a-kind place. We're going to be developing, with the assistance of our consultant, yearly plans that buttress our strategic mission and our vision going forward. And Tim is going to hang around later for questions and answers if anybody would like to ask him a question about it. Okay? The next slide deals with membership and records. The members of that committee are Corinne Cochran, Dale Dieger, and Tom Dutmers, and Renee Aimee. Dale Dieger is here. If anybody has any questions after the meeting, we can ask him. But so far, this year, our membership dues, as of August 1st, are ahead of last year. And it's amazing, but every year we were able to get great support from our members from a monetary standpoint. Membership drive continues in 19 neighborhoods. We're seeking, and I'll show you a slide in a minute, that we're seeking ambassadors for 4 more of those neighborhoods. And interestingly, 45% of our members support the GLA at the sustaining level of membership, and that's $250 a year. And then I'm going to, I can't read that, but I mean, you know, if anybody really wants to know how things are going and what the level of support is in terms of dollar support and category, they can read that. And next one, Andy. You see that this slide indicates a significant bump in our dollar revenue in 2018, and that was the result of a very generous donation by a member. And then the last column there indicates where we are so far in 2019. And that, by the way, is by comparison to previous years at this time, is very good, and very solid. we expect to obtain or achieve our goals this year in terms of money raising. Here's a list of the neighborhood ambassadors and the areas where we need, the neighborhoods where we need individuals to volunteer and help us out. I'm going to ask, Bill Meserve is a retiring member of our board, and he's an invaluable member of our water quality and water level committees, and I cannot do justice to his work, so I've asked Bill to talk directly as to those issues. Thank you, Bill.
This was a little too complicated for David, so he asked me to present this. The Cooperative Lakes Monitoring Program is a statewide program involving a lot of lakes to collect various data about our lakes. The word transparency here means Secchi disc, where we measure the clarity of the water, and we do that weekly during the summer. Chlorophyll, we collect water samples monthly in the Fisher, Brooks, and Big Glen and Little Glen. Phosphorus, we collect water samples in the spring and the fall. And aquatic invasives, we do a survey once per year. Next slide. That's Mike Litch's arm holding up our rake that collects plants. This is Cara, which is also called stonewort. This is the most common plant in our lakes, and it's in most places on the bottom in depths. On Big Glen, it's only in 8 feet and deeper, thankfully, or you wouldn't be able to swim. The big deal here is early detection. We are looking for invasive plants that can harm our lake and change its quality, and so that's why this team spends time looking for these invasive plants. Next slide, please. We did find an invasive for the first time in quite a few years, but it's a small patch of curlyleaf in Brooks Lake, and we will work to get that eradicated this year. We need a volunteer to go out there with a paddleboard or something and pull it all up. As we did this, we found zebra mussels, particularly in Big Glen, almost every time we raked up plants from the water. We found clumps of zebra mussels. It's kind of scary, folks. I don't think there's anything we can do about it, but we got them. Coltsfoot is a shore plant that started fairly close to my cottage. We have a paid person to round up the coltsfoot, to so to speak, with Roundup, and but the best thing she does is she finds it and she flags it, and we need permission to go on people's property to look for it along the shore, and so be patient with us. We try and keep it under control. And a new one is yellow iris that I had and my neighbor had, and Laurel asked that we dig it up, and my wife says, well, it's pretty, but it's invasive, so we eradicated ours. Going back to the invasive species, this summer already, we've taken 40 samples from 46 sites on Big Glen Lake. This is done with a special rake that we just throw in the water and dig up. We did it on 22 sites on Little Glen and about 10 sites on Brooks Lake and Big Fisher. We found about a dozen good species of plants, and most of those were healthy, and that's a good thing. Next slide. Oh, maybe go back one. This is some typical plants we find. The Cooperative Lakes Monitoring Program does not ask us to identify all the plants we find. They only want to know if we've found invasive plants. But we've been trying to identify all the plants for several years because I think it could be a good monitor of how the lake is changing. So we've got books and charts, and we try and identify all the plants that we drag up. All right, next slide. Secchi disc. This is our Secchi disc. It's black and white target, and it's on a tape measure. And we sink this down in the water at the deepest part on Big Glen and the other lakes, and we see how far down we can see it. Well, this chart, I went into the CLMP website and looked up our data for Big Glen, and it goes back farther than this, but this is interesting that we could basically, on average, see down 17 feet 15 years ago. Today, in the last couple of years, I'm seeing down as deep as 35 feet. Now, that makes the lake look beautiful and Mediterranean, but it may not be healthy. The clarity increase is probably due to zebra mussels. And the problem with zebra mussels is they filter out the plankton, which small fish feed on. So clean lake could mean a non-fishing lake someday. So this chart is significant and perhaps a bit troubling, but that's what we get. Next chart, please. The Water Level Committee. This is probably the biggest committee we have and the hardest working. Just, can these members stand up? Okay. These are the guys. We take turns being captains, and the captain has to go over to the dam a couple times a week and check the dam is flowing nicely and take a manual reading. We don't really use the manual reading anymore because we're automated. But show us the next chart. This is a little complicated, but it's our water level for the year, for the past year. And notice the ups and downs. So there's the blue line. If it's going up, it means we had a rain event. If it's going down, it means it was dry for a while and evaporation was happening, or we're letting water out through the Crystal River. We've had this July in particular, and now into August, we've had some rain events, which is quite strange. If you go back to July of 2018, we were in a drought. It very seldom rains in July and August, so the lake level went down. This year, it's staying up. Just a change in events. But I've got these kind of charts that go back 50 years. So we can compare what we're doing to many years ago. Next chart. Now you saw all those up and downs in the water level. This is the flow from the Crystal River over the dam. The blue line is the flow, and it goes up and down as we adjust the dam to try and keep the lake at the target level. This represents 100 trips to the dam by our volunteers and 32 changes of the gates to try and control the lake to the target that we're bound by the court. We're under a court order to maintain the water level, and we're probably the only private organization that controls the dam of a lake. So that's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. I've got 5 or 6 more summary reports for our committees. First one is the Boat Wash Committee. Sally Ann Morris and Ron Becker run that process, and they do a fantastic job. And you can see all the volunteers that work with her and Ron. The Boat Wash highlights, this is pretty incredible. In 2018, this operation washed over 3,700 boats. And in year to date, up till now, over 2,200. We also, as you see there, in 2019 M22 Challenge, there were 563 kayaks that were washed. This is an incredibly important committee or operation of the association, and it helps keep our lake clean. The next committee is our auxiliary committee. You see the names of the individuals that work on that committee. They do an incredible amount of volunteer work, 50-plus hours on 1,500 mailings, newsletters, remittance envelopes, and so on. Thank you very much, members of that committee. Technology committee is headed up by, among others, Cal Killen, another retiring board member. We're going to miss, as a board member, both Bill and Cal because of their technical experience, but both Cal and Bill have agreed to stay on to head up those committees going forward, which we really appreciate. They have come up with some new technologies that were just last year. They help one of those technologies helps record water level and flow on the Crystal River at the culvert number 3 on M22. That data is useful because there have been some plugs or some floods in that area, and as you see from that slide right there, that technology was useful in being able to determine and anticipate that flood, and we were able to do something about it to correct it. The Long Range Planning Committee is headed up by Jim Duttmers. It's been kind of in abeyance most recently because of the fact of our strategic plan process by the board. You see the members of that committee as well. And a very significant committee headed up by Lori Lyman is the 75th anniversary committee. And next year, incredibly, is going to be the 75th anniversary of this association. And so Lori, in her inimitable way, is planning a very cool set of celebrations in connection with that process. There will be a video commemorating the 75th year of the GLA, e-commerce commemorative items for purchase, the website for archiving family history, stories, and pictures, which could be really cool, and e-blast sharing important dates of the GLA. That relates to by the way, at the end of the meeting, we're going to talk about a proposed amendment to our bylaws about the scheduling of this annual meeting. We'd like to schedule next year's meeting and perhaps other meetings other than on this specific date, because our plan is to have the anniversary celebration in July. So we need to amend the bylaws today in order to make that happen. The Development Committee, as you see, is composed of the people listed. The goal of that committee is obvious: to provide long-term financial stability for the association, enabling us to preserve our fragile natural resource and so on. And then another significant program is the GLA Legends group. We have 40-some legends. We're looking for more. There was a neat party that you can see, I think I'm in that picture somewhere, at Duttmer's Farm just a month ago. And it's a, as everybody knows, is a program where legends agree to provide for the Glen Lake Association in their estate plan, whatever amount they can afford or they think they can accomplish. And we appreciate all those members. The board nominating committee is composed of the people listed. Peter Anderson is the chair, Joy Kreider, Bill Whitler, and the board has nominated, and the nominating committee rather, and then the GLA board has nominated the following people that are listed: Rick Fink and Stan Kreider to fill 2 vacant 3-year terms on the board. Those are positions vacated by both Cal Killen and Bill Meserve. And I need to be reelected to another 3-year term, hopefully, as is Vic Pierce. And can I call for a quorum? Ms. Sue? Thank you very much. Can you share with us the results of the election of the board members? Well, thank you very much. Thank you. All right, the bylaw change, Andy, can you put that proposed motion up? Article 5 of our current bylaws states that the annual meeting will be held on the 2nd Saturday of August. The board proposes that instead of that it be amended to state will be held on a date in July or August of each year as selected in the discretion really of the board of directors. Most importantly, next year we need to change it to coincide with our 75th anniversary. And then going forward, we thought if we're going to amend it, why don't we give the board a little discretion to change things around. We'll probably have it around the same time as this year, but who knows. Do I have a motion to so amend the bylaws? So moved. And a second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? How many, raise your hand in terms of, didn't sound like we have enough to defeat the motion. So the motion passes. Thank you. Now we can, anybody have any questions, either of me or Rob particularly, or anybody else on the board in connection with our presentations today? And we have a microphone that we can pass around.
Only question is, does Bill Meserve have a picture of that yellow iris? No,
There's a video of Rob on our website describing it and showing it, though. Is that correct?
Or Chuck, I can come to your house and do a home visit. I'll expect a cold beer.
Is there a plan or a timetable for dredging the channel between Big Glen and Fisher? It's getting kind of shallow. I don't know if that's planned.
Could Rob address that, please?
Yeah, well, I also, that one in a second. First on the yellow flag or the yellow iris, I also have a lot in my property. Last year, Rob and I looked at it and said, well, let's just try cutting off the seed heads, which I did, and it still spread a little bit. This year, when I went out to cut seed heads, I collected about 20 pounds of seed heads. And I had to spend a significant amount of time, and I don't know that that's going to be an effective way of controlling it. So if you're thinking of that, I would suggest maybe you should reconsider. It does seem to want to spread quite quickly. It is pretty. It's a green, long, wide leaf with a nice, beautiful iris-looking yellow flower, but it looks like it's really going to expand quickly. Now, the question was about the dredging, is that right? Could you repeat, please?
We have a timetable or a plan for redredging the channel between Big Glen and Fisher.
Yeah, the timetable for that is based off the Special Assessment District, which is a 5-year collection process. The intent was to dredge every 5 years. We're now in the 3rd year since the last dredge. Okay, so it would be a couple more years. If in fact we determine that 5 years is not enough, we need to reconvene with the township, Glen Arbor Township, who also supports that dredge 50%, and consider raising the assessment if we need to go quicker. But it's something that we can discuss. For those on Fisher Lake, we have a Fisher Lake barbecue on the 18th. Okay, that's a week from Sunday. Tricia Denton will be there, and I'm sure this will be a major topic that we'll discuss. And you're invited to come. It's at my house, 1 o'clock on the 18th.
Others?
By the way, the Fisher Lake Association is not a competing organization, it's a sister organization, right? Correct. Or brother. Oh, brother.
Andy mentioned that I'll be at the Fisher Lake meeting on the 18th, is that right? But I'm available to come to any of your neighborhoods. If you have a group of neighbors, friends that you want to get together, I'm happy to come and answer questions about not just the Guardian program, but I'm pretty well versed in just about everything that's going on with the association. The board does a really good job of keeping me up to date so that I can answer those kind of questions and cover more ground than they're able to cover. So please use me in that way. I also had the ear of the governor when she was here, and put in a plug for funding the Cooperative Lakes Management Program sustainably that Bill Meserve talked about. That funding's often in jeopardy from year to year. And like Bill mentioned, it's this historical data that has been there for so many years, and it's so important for us to have that kind of information about what's happening with changes in our water. Any other questions?
Any other questions? I have one last order of business. Cal Killen and Bill Meserve, would you proceed to the podium, please? Is it a check? No, it's not a check, man. These guys are retiring from the board, having served 2 3-year terms and another 3-year term. Their replacements have been elected this evening, and I wanted to present both of you with a gift card to the Funestrada restaurant down the way. And thank you for your service. As I said before, they both agreed to carry on with their technical engineering duties on the Water Level Committee and the technical committee. All right. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Second? All in favor? All right. Lunch is served. Thank you. Thank you for coming.